Tom Clark's Main Event is a Boink Studios production. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Boink Studios, and check us out on boinkstudios.com, where you can see all of our projects, past, present, and future. And now, on with the show.
This is Daddy Show. Step off.
Hey, hey! What is up? Welcome back to the program, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tom Clark, and this is Tom Clark's Main Event. We're back once again here with another thrilling, action-packed episode. No, we're not live, and no, we're not on Facebook this time. We are here with another exclusive interview. If you read the title of this show, then you know that this time we have the whole effing show, Rob Van Dam. Did you point at your back with your thumbs, folks? Because I know I did. This was fun. This one was fun. First of all, before we get rolling here, as always, we thank you folks for checking us out, for giving us the time of day. We do greatly appreciate it, as always. As we said before, this one's not being conducted live on Facebook. Live, as it were, on Wrestling Rumors, which is where we usually are every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Wrestling Rumors. Go check them out. Give the page a like, and be sure to watch the show live if you have the opportunity every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have I told you that? On Wrestling Rumors Facebook page. Now we got that bit of business out of the way. This is episode number 141 of the show, and folks, we are just churning them out like crazy. And recently back from a vacation. And it was well-deserved, I must say, and it was awesome, had a blast. Back to the real world now. The real world is never as fun as vacation is, yes, but you just got to make the best of what you have, man. Just roll with it, right? It's all what any of us can do. What makes my job a lot more fun, the things I get to do is talk to folks inside the pro wrestling business, and this one was no exception. For anyone out there who's ever heard an interview with Van Dam outside of pro wrestling, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He is one of the most personable guys, one of the most human guys I've ever spoke to in my life, and that kind of sounds a little odd, but you know, sometimes you don't know what to expect. I never know what to expect going into an interview with a talent, male or female. It's hard to know sometimes what to really expect. Sometimes I've encountered a little bit of ego, and that's fine. Sometimes I've encountered a little bit of maybe arrogance, and that's fine as well. Nothing wrong with that either. These guys are pro wrestlers, right? And sometimes I've encountered some very real individuals as well. Big Show immediately leaps to mind as a guy who's very real. Man, it's hard to be more real, I should say, than Rob Van Dam. And like I said, folks, just a fantastic guy, and he's got a message out there, folks. And I'm telling you right now, if you have yet to check out Headstrong, it's a documentary that features Rob Van Dam that started out as one thing and then quickly became something else. And the reason it changed direction is due to the concussions that he's been dealing with the past couple, 2-3 years now. He suffered a concussion against Pentagon Jr. in 2016 in a company called PCW. And since that time, he's dealt with the issue. He's met it head on. He's grabbed the bull by the horns, as the cliche goes. And he's done some research of his own accord, and he's talking to some very smart people out there, trying to get the word out, trying to get something going along the lines of helping people who have dealt with concussion, who maybe could prevent concussion to begin with, or deal with the symptoms shortly after you get it. A lot of this stuff I was familiar with, but honestly, he opened my eyes during the midst of this conversation to a lot of the things that he talked about. So in that way, it was educational for me as well. But Rob has truly educated himself on the topic. We talk a lot in the interview about this. We've got nearly an hour, got about 45 minutes out of Rob, and it was awesome. He was in no hurry. I was in no hurry to let him go. You know, usually I ask ahead of time, how much time do you have? And if it's like, oh, I got a few minutes, then that's cool. We'll do it. I kind of forgot to ask this time. So I wasn't about to cut him off, and I had no desire to stop talking because the guy is fantastic, and what a great interview he was. But yeah, man. So we do hope you enjoy it. As we said before, we cover a lot of ground here. primarily the concussion issue, which if you are a pro wrestling fan, if you are a fan of sports in general, you can't not know what I'm talking about. The concussion issue is very real. It's very problematic. It's something that, whether you're an NFL fan, NHL, MLB, I guess to a certain degree, NBA to a certain degree, any sort of contact sport, UFC, pro wrestling, obviously, then if you've been a fan for longer than 10 minutes, you've heard all about the issues with concussions. It's a big deal, man. It was a big deal 30, 40 years ago. It's a big deal now because we know much more about it than we've ever known before. And Rob Van Dam, whether he meant to or not, has become a spokesman. And I don't know if pro wrestling could have had a better guy out there at the forefront because, again, because he is real, because he is genuine. He's got nothing to hide. And the documentary, the movie, just takes a very in-depth, close, personal look at his situation, his life, things he's dealt with in and out of the ring, both. So it's a must-watch. If you've not seen Headstrong yet, I highly recommend it. So we're not going to keep talking your ear off here, folks. We're going to get to the interview, and then we're going to come back and wrap it up and say our thank yous, as we typically do after we do something like this. So as with the past couple of interviews I've done, these were done over the telephone. I've got the audio here for you, and it's been cleaned up to a certain extent. Some of it may be a little rough in patches. I think the connection on his end was a little tough. I never physically moved where I was sitting. I stayed in the same location, but it kind of sounded at moments like maybe he was up. At least maybe moving around the room. I'll just put it that way. So if you have any issues hearing it, my apologies. I've tried to clean up as best I can, but hopefully you get everything out of this and that you enjoy it. And like I said, we'll be back after it's over to say our thank yous and to plug a couple of things. So hold tight, and we hope you enjoy this, man, because it was really, really fun to get into. So here it is. Here's Rob Van Dam.
Hello, RVD calling in.
Hi, Rob. This is Tom Clark. How are you today, sir?
Good, Tom. How are you?
Doing good, man. Thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you helping me get the word out.
Yeah, I knew the whole concussion thing, I'm sure, is an issue. God, for so many wrestlers out there, especially these days. But I didn't realize what kind of a toll it had taken on you. I mean, I know the match happened. Was it PCW in 2016?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So.
It was November of 2016. It was just a very simple bump. It was very non-impactful, so it was just amazing that the symptoms would be, so dominant after something like that. Yeah.
That's crazy. And you worked, was it Pentagon you worked that night, I believe, I think?
That is correct too.
Yeah.
It was the bump was like so soft and so simple that I'm sure that he doesn't even know about it unless someone that watched the movie told him.
Right. It's crazy considering the years of unprotected chair shots that you took. I mean, now of course most of the major companies don't allow that anymore. WWE included, of course. But when you were coming up in the business, man, of course, that stuff was happening all the time. It's amazing that you didn't suffer something that severe during those years. I mean, I saw the interview where you said that you had suffered like hundreds of concussions leading up to that point.
Yeah, and it is, it's amazing, but there also is probably a reason, and so that's what I'm really curious about now, because I always had a theory before that maybe the C was preventing concussion damage, and now science is proving that that's true, and NFL is looking at trying to make a medicine from CBDs that players can take pregame, and then they can play their game and their brains will be protected to an extent from damage during the game. So that I've always wondered if there was a correlation between the fact that that I always had a level of marijuana in my system, and that I was taking all those chair shots, and that the any kind of symptoms I got from any of them usually lasted like 5 seconds and they go away. I've only, in my whole life, I think I've only had two concussions where the symptoms lasted longer than that night. You know, like where I could still feel it the next day. That's only happened like twice besides this one, and I felt fine, except I had double vision. I could see fine out of either eye. When I opened both eyes, I had double vision, and I kept thinking it would just go away. And I wake up and feel fine the next morning, but day after day, you know, I started thinking, well, it's not going anywhere. Maybe I need to get this thing checked out.
Right. That's crazy to think that all those years, because you were that you were smoking, that it was actually helping. Which, you know, a lot of the stigma surrounding that's been it's thankfully it's ending today, so we don't have quite as many people as uptight about it as we did, say, 20 years ago or earlier or whatever. But just the fact that actually helped you in the long term, that's just what an amazing thing to be able to say. I mean, have you run across anybody else during this time that shared a similar experience with you, whether it was in the business or outside the business, like, hey, man, I was in the same boat you were, and this actually helped me as well?
Well, I was asking my peers years ago if they had any concussion damage, you know, long-lasting, or we call it post-concussion syndrome. And I was surprised that most of my peers said, yeah, like they had no question about it. And I still feel that way when I talk to my peers, like, they seem to be living with symptoms, and some of them would say, "I see stars throughout the day." Some of them would, some of my friends would say headaches, or that they just like doze off in the middle of a sentence and trail off and lose their attention span. And I was hearing everybody say that, and I was like, wow, I'm really lucky, because at that time I had zero. There was like, you know, nothing that was reminding me of all the concussions, even though I was getting concussions every single night, and I had no idea at the time, you know, the long-term damage that I could be doing. So the education has changed now. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know 100% for sure that it was the marijuana, but I do know that marijuana does help with that, and I am planning. I have this. It's early on right now in this in my meetings, but I'm planning on coming up with a medicine, a neuron protector with CBDs, and I want to get. I'm talking to scientists and a guy that owns this company, and I want to see this through. And you know, it's not so much about the business as it is about finding something that could actually help my peers, help other athletes, and you know, to be completely honest, my main drive is I don't want what's happened to a bunch of my friends to happen to me. You know, I get checked out in the movie for CTE, and you know, they really can't find it unless you're dead, but they can do certain things. They can look for coloration, irregularities, inflammation, and I've had 3 different doctors look at my MRIs, and they all said that I looked good, everything looked normal. And, you know, I was thankful, you know, like I dodged a bullet. But at the same time, I don't know that won't set in later, you know, and you know, as my friends are killing themselves, it's becoming way more serious to me to try to find a cure for this, something to prevent it, something to help. And nothing's going to be guaranteed to work for everybody. I mean, everybody reacts differently to every drug, but this is something that there's already science for. And you know, the people that lose money got to make sure that they're going to make money before they release any kind of product. You know, that's the way big pharma works. But there's neurotropins, and there's CBDs. There's some that have been proven to actually regenerate brain tissue that has already died off. So we need to do it.
So you talked about watching the guys, if you know, kill themselves. I've been a fan since the 80s. So I grew up watching the territories, and then through the Attitude Era and then in today's modern era. And, of course, like we said before, the unprotected Chairshot's kind of a thing of the past for the most part, for most of the major companies anyway. But now it seems like there's almost a mentality of, well, if we can't do that, let's go as strong style as we can. Let's go as high risk as we can. Let's put on a show. What is it about this style where it's, you drop me on my head, I'll drop you on your head? What is it? Why do they keep pushing? Like, you don't have to throw anybody under the bus or anything by name, but I'm just curious, like, what is it about this that you think causes these guys to not think long term? Why, especially since they know how dangerous it can be? Why are they not thinking long term for their own personal health?
Well, I think, we got to take into consideration the nature of the beast. We are talking about professional wrestling, and I have for 30 years now, I've been a professional wrestler, and in that time, I've heard many athletes say that professional wrestlers are the toughest people on the planet, and one would have a hard time disagreeing with that. I mean, certainly some of them by their accomplishments alone. We got the strongest men in the world, we got like the greatest accomplished athletes, but also to take that punishment, you do have to be tough, and I don't think that should change. I don't want to see pro wrestling made into a Nerf world where people are wearing Nerf outfits and falling on Nerf pads. I think, that, like, because it's a different time now, when I got into wrestling, it was about protecting the business, and fans looked at the business different. They looked at it like it was a legit fight. Now fans think that they understand because they know that it's entertainment, so they think that they understand it clearly. And so now the wrestlers are catering towards a crowd that thinks they understand it, and that's why it's different now. So they don't care about protecting the business as much as saying, well, look, here's what we could do if we dropped all the traditional rules and we did it our way. Here's some amazing moves and entertainment we could do. And so that's what I've noticed is the stuff people do now that you couldn't do way back in the day because it just wouldn't fit. You got guys that are taking the moves are the same guys that are giving the moves to themselves, and I'm not a fan of that style at all. But when it comes to taking the stiff bumps, that's my art form. When I take a DDT or a pile driver, I spike myself on the head, and that's just because I'm in the moment so much. I'm committed to the moment, and that's from the beginning till the end of the match, and that's my art form. So I don't think that needs to change as much as just being conscious and aware, like you're talking about. I'm not taking chair shots to the head. When I'm falling on my head, I'm hoping to not whack myself on the head again. I've already done it a couple times since I got the bad one, and luck would shake away because I wondered, like, is this one going to shake away or is it going to stick around? But I really think that it needs to be a rough physical contact sport in order for pro wrestling to even have the integrity that it is. So I don't see watering it down to a level that looks like any sixth grader could do it.
Right. Speaking from your own personal experience, you talked about having hitting your head a couple times since that happened. Has it made you maybe not cautious, but are you more aware now when you're in the midst of a match, or is the adrenaline pumping? You're just not thinking about, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe if he calls this, I'll say, why don't we do this? Or does that even enter your frame in the heat of the moment, in the middle of a match?
No, it's not so much that. It's more of just, thinking of how I'm trying to be conscious of not slamming my head on the mat, and sometimes I just take such a quick bump. Sometimes someone gives me a shoulder tackle, and wham, I hit the mat so quick because that's the way I do it. And it can just be something like that, and I'm dizzy for a second. It'll shake off for a few seconds. I'm much more aware because now when it happens, I'm like, oh no, did I just pick it up again? But I'll tell you, I learned so much about concussions through making this movie. It originally the movie was supposed to be about me doing a comedy tour. And I showed up the first day of the comedy tour with these symptoms, which I didn't think they were going to last. I had double vision, and at first I just said, let's go on with the show. I'm sure I'll wake up feeling fine tomorrow, and then we won't even have to mention the double vision. But that didn't happen, and by the end of the tour, my vision was still messed up. I still had double vision, and so at that point, I thought, well, I should probably get checked out. But even then, I felt like, if I am better in a couple of days, then maybe I won't get checked out. So I still didn't take it as serious, as maybe I should have. And one of the things that I learned that I think will surprise people, my doctor, Dr. Williams at Curl and Job, he told me that you don't have more of a chance of getting a concussion once you've had a concussion before. And I've always agreed with him, but I always hear the opposite. Everyone seems to, quote, know. You know, they always say, well, once you get some concussions, you're more susceptible and you start getting them all the time. I've heard everybody say that, and I've never agreed with it. And my doctor agrees with me, so that's one thing I learned. I still had symptoms of this concussion when he cleared me to wrestle. And he said, if you get another concussion, that's completely on its own. It's got nothing to do with this one. And I was still having, you know, some vision problems. But another thing that I learned that I think is more important, and I think this is the takeaway that I got from the movie, probably after watching it a few times, I finally realized I did everything opposite that you're supposed to do when you get a concussion. You need rest. You need to be in a dark room. And I did the opposite. I thought that my brain needed stimulated. I felt like my brain was like a car engine that was like sputtering, and I just felt like I needed to step on the gas. So I tried to stimulate it. I tried to read. I tried to watch TV. And I went on with the movie tour, you know, and I was on there every day on stage with bright lights in my eyes for 45 minutes to an hour, you know, talking to an audience. And when I called Chris Nowinski, the brain expert, and my friend from Harvard that studies the brains, he told me not to do the tour, and I didn't even think about that. I'm, you know, professional. The show must go on. But now I'm pretty sure that because of the way I did things, that's why my symptoms lasted so long. And a year and a half later, I was still in vision therapy.
Well, Chris has been out there for a while now, and I think he has brought so much spotlight to it. I think maybe you bring something a little bit different than Chris does because you are still active in the business, and you can be a voice of, and not just of, I don't want to say warning, but of education. Because like a lot of things you just said, I didn't even know myself. So the fact that you are learning these things as you go as well, I think is a great thing for you to get out there and to, like I said, to help educate people. Are you getting, I'm sure you're getting positive reaction. Are you getting people stepping up after these shows or whatnot, talking to you and saying, hey, man, because of you, I've reached out and I've done this or I've gotten help or whatever?
Yes, and what it's been so far has been with depression. When some of the feedback I've gotten from my movie, you know, I mean, I made the movie, like I said, it was supposed to be, you know, plugging a comedy tour, and then it became about my concussion, and then it ends up being so much bigger because I got to go into my whole life. So the documentary ends up being, you know, really big, and I'm really proud of the way it came out. I couldn't have predicted that some of the feedback I would get. People liked that they could relate to me, and they had no idea that they could relate to me so much because they see in the movie I have to go through life struggles just like everybody else, and I'm open and genuine about it. Right before we reach the point where the movie starts, to backtrack a little bit, you know, I had just lost a lot. My marriage was over. I was separated. And then within a few weeks, I got separated. My dog died and my dad died. And so I was like really depressed. And I had to deal with it. And I talk about that in the movie. And I learned just from sharing my experiences that really helps people. So that's why, like right now, I really want to share my experiences about concussions. I didn't even, when I started pushing the movie, when I first put it out, it was originally I wanted people to see it because the movie was good and it was a good documentary, and I wanted to, you know, be reimbursed on the business end for what we put into it. But a couple of weeks ago, I was like newly motivated with the whole concussion awareness thing. And at first we didn't even talk about what the movie was because it was a surprise angle. Didn't want to ruin the surprise when you watch it. But now I'm repackaging it, and I'm learning, like I just said, just from sharing my experiences, it brings people out. I had people when I was talking about depression that said that, yeah, they were afraid to get help, just like you said. And now with concussions, I want to be that person, that, you know, that representative of it. Ashley Massaro killed herself a few weeks ago, and they're being so hush-hush about the info that's been released. But what has come out is that they think it was that she hung herself from deep depression from concussions, like 9 concussions that she had while she was wrestling. And that's as believable as anything else. I knew her. She didn't seem like somebody that wanted to die. Mike Awesome was my writing partner. He didn't seem like somebody that wanted to die. In the Chris Benoit thing, he didn't seem like somebody that would do that. And, that those are just a few. And I'm just mentioning some people that went by the way of rope. But, the list goes on and on and on. But that last one really made me realize that I would love to change the world. And also, if my movie, is a tool to do it and to open up conversation, then that's just great the way the universe worked out, because I'm all over it now. I don't want to go out the same way, and I can't believe how that last one seemed to just get, swept under the rug.
I think the fact that you're out there and you're making such noise about this, I just think it's such a positive thing, not just for your situation and also the whole concussion situation as a whole, but also for the business of pro wrestling. What do you think, in your opinion, apart from the talents looking out for themselves, the men and women, all these guys, gals, apart from that, what do you think the companies, maybe not WWE specifically, but whoever you want to talk about, what do you think they specifically could do to help facilitate a more open line of communication? Because we've always heard about, guys won't say anything. They're afraid they'll lose their spot. They're not going to tell the boss they've got a headache or they're seeing stars. They're afraid they won't be on the show tomorrow night. I mean, what can be done? Is it better now, in other words, than it was 20 years ago in that regard?
It definitely is, which is strange to me, because I do come from that old school mentality, which by the way, I do say in my movie, I can't blame any wrestling promoter or anybody, for any of the injuries I had. There was nobody that told me to do anything that I wasn't stupid enough to do myself. You know what I mean? So I also never told anybody if I had an injury, because I figured as long as I can keep working, then I'm not hurt, and that was my rule of thumb. Now it is different. I've noticed that when I did my return to WWE in I think 2013, I noticed that the guys, they were reporting everything, and also it was just a different group of guys. The trainer told me that when tells one of the guys that they give him a prescription for pain pills, they look at him and they say, do I have to take this? That's definitely not the class that I came from. You know what I mean? Class I came from would have been Xeroxing copies of that prescription. And so it's totally different now. They care about their health. They're not partying like they used to. It's more of it's become more of a business, and to be straight edge or to be even clean and live a good athletic life is more accepted now. It used to be just the boys that would get through the night to go out to hit the bar afterwards and drink. And with the grind WWE puts you on, you really don't have time to do that very much. And also, you're going to be so tired if you don't just do everything to keep yourself healthy. So I've seen that change, yes. I'm sure, there's always going to be the factor of a lot of us, if someone says, are you okay? A lot of us are going to always struggle to say, yes, I'm fine. And that's always going to be a factor, but it's up to us to realize maybe when we're not fine. And when your brain is impacted in a way where your senses are off, whether it's slow motion, the sound is out, maybe you feel like you're sleeping, maybe you feel like you just hit a nitrous oxide hit, you're waking up. Whenever you're off a little bit like that, that's a concussion. And now we know that that's something that's serious. So even if you might feel like you're okay, it's definitely worth, if there's some experts around, it's definitely worth telling them. And it's worth, and what we need to do really is talk about it and educate ourselves more. I feel like it's a swear word. There's a class action suit against the WWE. A bunch of wrestlers are involved in it trying to sue WWE. And because of that, WWE has been very defensive, and I feel like the word concussion is something they don't really want to talk about. And I think that attitude, I think, is what I would like to change. And yes, let's talk about it. What? There's things out there we can buy that can protect our brains. Well, let's look at that. Let's study that instead of ignoring it and just trying to. Sometimes I feel like the media is placated, and the NFL can say, "Oh yeah, we're looking into this," and then maybe they're not really doing a whole lot about it. I think that's the kind of things that need to change. But the more the information that's getting out there, the more we're heading that way. And as I said, I'm on the front line trying to do everything I can to make this happen.
You mentioned the NFL, and it's interesting because the players' union, I believe, tries to do as much good as it can for the players and the retired veterans who are still dealing with injuries 20, 30, 40 years later in some cases. I mean, we've always heard about the possibility of a union for the boys in pro wrestling. It seems like it would be such a huge, unwieldy thing that it would be extremely hard to organize. Who would you put at the head of it? Would it be business people or wrestling people? I mean, do you think if established and run the right way, it would be an asset, be a benefit, or do you think it's even possible?
I've never been able to wrap my head around the idea, and mostly like where would its jurisdiction end? That's what I want to know, because it's like there's WWE, and they're the one big company. They're mainstream. They are the standard setters. But if you want them to have insurance, are you also telling me you want, all the little tiny groups, the little MLW that runs once every 3 months, and the little MCW and RCW? I mean, there's so many territories right now. Like every town seems to have its own wrestling promotion and group of local supporters, and like, unless you're going to say across the board that all of them, have mandated health insurance, then I don't see how it would work. Personally, a lot of people saw that John Oliver skit that he did on wrestling, and people got fired up over it. But I have a counter to every point that he made. I love being an independent contractor. I don't want to be an employee. That would suck. And, they might be able to say, oh, but WWE doesn't let you work for anybody else. You're traveling 300 days a year. When are you going to find time? What are you going to do, start taking indie bookings on your 1 day every 2 months that's off? That's not going to happen. When you make your independent contract, you negotiate the terms. You know what I mean? So it's based on your value and how much leverage you have to negotiate. So hey, you know what? I have to have a car taken care of. I want a bus. I need my plane and my hotel taken care of. That's all up to you when you negotiate. And the thing with the health insurance is, I ask everybody this, and everyone gives me the same answer. Would you rather get paid X amount of money and have your health insurance taken care of, or would you rather have more money and you take care of your own insurance? Right. Makes sense. Everybody answers the same way, yeah, when you think about it. Right. Well, you mentioned the John Oliver thing, and I told you I've been a fan most of my life, and when that story hit, I'm covering this stuff every week, and I'm like, I can't believe in 2019 this. Why pick now? And he showed clips that were 25 years old, 25 years old, and I'm like, did someone just need a ratings boost this week? Where'd this come from? It amazes me sometimes how it's almost like you have to dig. And honestly, maybe it's because not just him, but whoever, there's not a lot to dig right now. I mean, besides the issue with concussions, which is obviously a very serious issue, like you said, the business has changed. It's not the way it used to be. So I think maybe some people just have a hard time with that, and they feel like they have to target it and go after it in whatever way they can. Yeah, something else, too. I always feel like Vince McMahon is the scapegoat for everything in wrestling that goes wrong. In all the interviews that I've seen him do protecting his position, I agree with him every single time. It's not his fault that wrestlers are killing themselves. You know what I mean? There's no part of me that draws that conclusion to him. I mean, it's all about personal choices. We choose this crazy lifestyle, and we're going to live on the road as entertainers. And, of course, we got to be smart enough to take care of ourselves, or we're going to fall into the traps. There's no way that I think that people should be on Vince McMahon and blame him and make him out to be this big evil asshole that I mean, he's a very successful businessman. Nobody can doubt that. And whether personally they feel like he's whether they like his skits or feel like he's a lowlight, that's an opinion on the guy's character. But as far as putting all the blame on him for what all the wrestlers choose to do to themselves, I can't get behind that. And personally, I've never had anybody tell me that they needed me to keep working after I was injured or hurt or force me to do anything that I didn't want to do. I've never had that happen. I just never told them I was hurt, and all my crazy ideas were my crazy ideas.
Right. You would think it would certainly put them in some sort of liable situation if they had an agent backstage saying, no, go out there and drop him on his head and keep your mouth shut, and I don't care if you don't feel it. I mean, obviously, that seems...
That would be different, yeah, and the class action lawsuit on the concussions, my understanding is that the basis of the lawsuit, this guy won a lawsuit against the NFL, and so now he's taking that same formula and trying to get money from WWE. But my understanding is the reason that NFL was liable was because they knew about the potentials of long-term concussion syndrome. They knew that it could lead to CTE, and they were hiding reports and not letting the players know. That's my understanding is to the lawsuit, is that they're saying, hey, you guys knew and didn't tell us. And even that makes it different.
That's frightening to know that that's the case, man. Just playing with people's lives in that regard, that is insane to me. I can't wrap my head around that. So you're talking about the documentary course and getting the word out there. What's been the biggest surprise for you? And during the course of the educating yourself and talking to doctors and trying to get something done and talking about, finding something to help protect your brain and, on the way to maybe something happening in the future or whatever. What's been the biggest surprise that you took away from all this that maybe you didn't know before?
The biggest surprise, I think, just hit me a couple weeks ago when I realized that I'm not over it. I got tested, everything's normal. Last time I had my eyes checked, the reaction and everything's normal on my eyes. I feel like I dodged a bullet. Like, thank God I'm not one of those sad cases. But then the more I study it, I know from reading that CTE can set on later in life too. So now what I've just learned is that I'm not necessarily out of the hot water at all. I want to do whatever I can to increase my chances of that. That has been the biggest surprise. Like, I made the movie, and the movie's like, wow, I'm messed up in the head. Let's get me checked out. Do I have CTE? Oh, thank God I don't. That was how I felt. And then lately I've been feeling like that's temporarily true, but I don't know. Even without wrestling anymore, with all those concussions, how do I know it won't set in later like Alzheimer's does? It's just a protein that just like builds up on your brain and it blocks your information highways, and then you can't remember shit. You don't know the day of the week or the answers to simple questions, and it's very similar. That's how I discovered that I thought THC might be beneficial to CTE, because I was reading reports that they were having remarkable results with Alzheimer's. And I knew that the tau protein is very much like the Alzheimer's. They're very, very similar in what's happening on the brain. So that was where I made the connection to THC years ago. And right now they're still studying it, but everything they're just starting to study. Like, it was illegal to study marijuana until recently, and it's been that way forever. There's been lawsuits against the Institution of Medicine at least since the 90s, since 91, and it was illegal to test your own marijuana, because you would have to grow marijuana to test it, and that was illegal, and that was a loophole that the government has kept in place. And now that legalization is happening, now we're looking at the plant, and we're learning more and more about what some of us knew years ago, that it's like the most resourceful plant on the whole planet, and there's so many people that could benefit from it. And we're learning about miraculous stuff now that we're able to separate the CBDs from the THC, so it's not even psychoactive. You can give it to kids with seizures, and it's amazing. And it's really, the resistance has always been about the powers to be. People have always asked me, like, why why don't they realize how much money we would make off of taxing and legalizing marijuana? And I always have to remind people, if someone's losing money, and that's why it's prohibited right now. And the people that are losing money don't want it to be legal. Pharmaceuticals, they don't want marijuana to be legal. Alcohol, tobacco, they don't want it to be legal. Fuel, they don't want you to use hemp seed oil to run your cars on. Not to mention all the products that can be made from hemp. Go back to William Randolph Hearst and his newspapers and the evil weed that he talked about, so he could chop down forests of 20-year-old trees instead of using an annual crop of hemp. That's how the world runs. And now the people that run the world, those 1%ers, they're learning to capitalize on the marijuana industry. They're setting all their deposits in place that they can do legally, and then soon, in the next couple of years, there's going to be a switch that's going to be flipped, boom, and then all these companies that were losing money are going to be the ones benefiting from it, and then we'll be using the plant and finding out that it can replace like 80% of everything else.
That's crazy, man. Just to know how far we've come as a culture that we're in. The loophole that you mentioned, I almost laughed out loud. I had no idea that was the case. But it makes sense on one hand, but on the other hand, it's like, well, haven't you just, shot yourself in the foot by saying, well, you can't study it. Why? Well, because it's illegal to grow it, man. So that it's almost laughable that it's like, well, you can't do this because of this. And it just seems like it. Yeah, that's so twisted to me.
Another example, marijuana was prohibited nationally in 1937 with the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act. What that meant was you had to bring you had to get a stamp from the government that said that you were legal to grow marijuana. But in order to go get that stamp, you had to bring marijuana to show them that you were a grower, which was breaking the law. So that was the loophole they used in 37.
That's insane.
Ridiculous. But that's how our world is run, though.
Right.
The Rockefellers, the Morgans, those people, the Carnegie, like all those the families that are the really rich people that really own everything. They're in control. They're the ones that make the laws. They always have been.
That's crazy. So switching gears just for a second here, you were talking about we're talking about wrestling a little bit here as the backdrop. So the announcement was made today that you're going to face Moose at Slammiversary on July 7th. That's pretty cool. You're looking forward to this, I guess, yes?
Yes, I am. Since I've been back in Impact, I enjoy the guys that I'm working with. They're respectful. They go out of their way to tell me how happy they are to have me there in their company, and that goes a long way because it is competition. And until the last few years, I used to look at it as so much competition that my heart was kind of guarded. Like people would talk about other wrestlers. And I'd be like, well, screw that guy, screw that guy. I beat that guy up. And I really felt like that. Like they were, and now I'm like so much relaxed now that I'm not doing it full time. And now some of the guys I always hated, I got no reason to hate them. Now I'm like, oh, I'm glad he's still alive. That's cool. And
right.
It's so different now. And so when I was in WWE my last couple of times, all the young guys were in that competitive mind, so they didn't want to say anything till I was on my way out the door. And I thought a lot of them were dicks. Then on the way out the door, they'd say, "Hey, I just want to let you know you were my favorite, man. I used to wear your shirt." And I'm like, "What? I thought you were a dick this whole time." So with the Impact guys, they're opening up. They seem genuine, and they're happy to see the whole product move forward. You know what I mean? They got like the team attitude where they really want the whole show to do well and stuff. And so I really like the guys. And I noticed Moose right away. I think Moose in his mind figured where the big money was working with RVD because he started calling me out and mocking me like right from the beginning. He's no dummy.
Right. So is it weird for you to know that a lot of these guys, I'm sure, are coming up and telling you that, hey, man, I grew up watching you and you're an inspiration to me? Is that still weird for you, or you kind of accepted that now?
Yeah, no, I accept it. It's obvious to me when I watch wrestling on TV. So before I went back, I'm seeing everybody do all of my moves. And it's not even just, in Impact. It's in WWE. It's like a whole generation of wrestlers that grew up watching me and my peers. But I'm very aware of the influence that I've had on them, and so it's not so weird. It's more just a matter of fact. Like when people in their 30s, if they say, "Dude, I grew up watching you," and and they'll go, "Well, I mean, not grew up." I go, "Dude, no, believe me, I know. I understand. I'm aware. I'm like a Highlander. I feel like I've just been walking the earth for like hundreds of years, and I'm seeing generation after generation of people that I'm meeting, and they tell me, "Dude, you look the same." I'm like, "Yeah, it's got time to change."
Right, there you go. Like I said, I'm sure that's crazy for you, but like, man, back in the day, I remember watching you, and it was like you've never heard that before, right? But the one thing I could always say about RVD was that no one else looked like you, sounded like you, or worked like you. I mean, yeah, today guys have taken from you and inspiration and all that stuff, but at the time, man, you were such an original, and you always stood out, and you always brought something different to the table than the guy you were working or the guy that came up before you, after you. Were you able to be were you very aware at the time during those days, like back in the early 2000s or whatnot? Were you very aware of, hey man, I bring something different to the table. I'm valuable. They need to use me in this way because I'm different.
I mean, I had to hear a lot of other people tell me. Sabu was my mentor. He trained me, under the original Sheik way back in '89. So because of that, I always just went with whatever he said, and whatever he said was true to me. So when I first got to ECW dressing room, he'd say, he'd point people out. He'd say, "Oh, those guys over there, they think they're really good, but they're the shits. Those guys are the shits." And whatever he said was just true to me. And he always said that he always told me that I was better, that he and I were better than everybody else. And I believed him. But it wasn't until, and also, like, before my first match even, when I first was training to wrestle, in my mind, I was always trying to come up with moves that I'd never seen before. I came up with the split-legged moonsault way before my first match. And that's what I always enjoyed out of it was I don't know, I looked up to guys like Leaping Lanny Poffo, Brady Boone, Owen Hart, because they were doing moves I hadn't seen before. They were doing flips and landing on their feet, bouncing off their legs on the rope. I was like, what? I'd never seen that before. It opened up my mind to think outside the box. It wasn't until I heard Taz in an interview when I was in ECW, he said that he thought RVD was the most athletically gifted wrestler in the business, and that kind of like it really stood out in my mind. But it was like the first time I'd heard that. Like, I was like, me? Why not like Rey Mysterio? He does all kinds of flips, and then I was learning that people looked at me that way, and so I put a lot more energy into it. And then eventually I owned it. But I really didn't know, like, the first 10 years coming up that I was that different. I mean, I felt different. I know that I think different. I'm different 24 hours a day in everything that I do. And they taught me to be original. She taught me be myself. Sabu said, don't try to take someone else's spot. There's already one of them. Just, make your own spot and be you, and don't try to take after anybody else. And I'm sure that had a lot to do with it as well, with me just coming in as my own.
Well, as far as, and this is just me guessing, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but a career highlight would have to be in 2006 when you were both the ECW and WWE champions at the same time. That must have been huge for you. Did you get a chance during that year especially to stand back and take a breath and appreciate what was happening, or was it just such a whirlwind that you didn't get a chance to think about it till later?
More of a whirlwind, honestly. Like I find that when I'm inside, when I'm inside looking out, it's hard to imagine what it looks like on the outside looking in. And so there's been a lot of moments in my career where somebody would point something out to me and I didn't realize. I was doing an interview and somebody said, "What was that like? What do you think?" There you were at WrestleMania 3 as a kid in the crowd watching this, And then at WrestleMania 18, you're there and you're winning the Intercontinental Championship. Like, how was that full circle? And I was like, I never noticed that, so you just pointed that out to me. Like, things like that usually go by me. It was a great, like you're right, it was a highlight of my career, and it was great for me. But it was because of my personal struggle or mission at the time was to try to bring ECW back. You know, they were saying nobody remembers ECW anymore. Nobody knew it in the first place, and I was trying to tell Vince, no, let us do ECW, and the fans will appreciate it. So when we did that, and when I beat John Cena, it was for the passion and that hardcore blood that never died out, and all of us wrestlers and all the fans that loved it. So it was really like a victory for everybody, for the cause, more than just winning a match, and knowing that we were bringing it back as a third brand, and that I was the best foot to put forward with that. That was great for me. But I mean, it was all business. It wasn't like I'm like some of these other guys that go home and take pictures of myself naked wearing the championship belts. It wasn't like that at all.
Right. So that brings up an interesting point when you look at titles, because again, as fans, we hear one thing and maybe the other thing is true. We've often heard about, well, they're not titles, they're not real, they're props. These guys don't look at them as championships. But then you see certain men or women win a belt in the ring, and they're legit in tears, and they're shaking, and they're very happy. It looks like they're happy. Either that or they're acting, and it's awesome. But what did it mean to you? Did you really take it that seriously, or was it just like, no, this is my responsibility, I'm going to do the best I can with it?
Okay, so I got taught, that the belts were props. And Sabu used to tell me you can't eat a belt, because some promoters, they talk about they want to put a belt on you, and Sabu would be like, tell them you need more money, you don't need a belt. And so I came up that way. That's one of the ways where things are so different now is like I wasn't allowed to be a fan anymore. The very first time I was allowed in a dressing room before I had my first match. Sheik and Sabu drilled me and said, look, you're not a fan, you're one of the boys, you don't talk to anybody unless they talk to you, and then just say your name, shake their hand, don't say anything unless they talk to you. No pictures, don't ask anybody for an autograph, you're not a mark. And so I was brought in that way. And honestly, that probably did hinder some of the enjoyment I could have had over celebratory times in my career, but at the same time, it made me a professional. When I started seeing like this new generation, and I saw the girl gets a tattoo on her neck of the date that she won the championship. Like for me, like back in my day, someone like that would have probably been ribbed. They would have probably kicked her out of the dressing room, And it should. I'm not saying that it should be like that, but it just that's how it used to be. And now, because the curtain has been jerked open, and now people think they understand what it is. Fans watching think they could do a better job writing the show. They're so critical, and it's easier for fans to get into the business now. Back in the day, we had to get beat up to prove that we were tough, and then we had to prove that we had coordination and any potential whatsoever, so we're not wasting a trainer's time. And then we had to sign up for a long term, like 2 years, to let whoever was breaking us in represent us and make sure that we weren't going out learning how to do things wrong and ruining his name. Now it's like you can pay $25 to work out at a wrestling school one time and never show up again. You can just go there as a reporter and pay, and then just write about like what you learned. It's so different now. It's such a different world, and the fans are allowed to be marks now. Like in the last 3 years, I hardly ever step into a dressing room where the wrestlers themselves aren't lining up to take pictures of me. And it's different. I'm not saying it's worse, but it's, being old school, part of me tries to hold on to the roots that are my values, but at the same time, I recognize everything has to change. And at least there is a lot more love that comes with it this way.
Yeah, man, you really sound like that you're somebody that would be great to have backstage. I don't know how much time that you want to keep wrestling, how long you think you're going to keep going, or whatever your goals are in the future. But have you thought about, I mean, I'm sure you have contemplated at least at one point or another about working backstage, whether it's, I mean, AEW is getting off the ground. If you were to be contacted in the backstage coach, they're calling them coaches instead of agents, right? So would that interest you? Would WWE interest you? Would it be like, hey, man, we want you backstage talking to these guys and coaching them up? Is that something you'd like to get into?
I never saw myself doing that. If the situation came around, it would be completely 100% business for me. And that's really why I'm wrestling. I've been talking about I could possibly retire for years, but the more I talk about retiring, the more my value goes up. And that's the reason that I'm still wrestling, is because I'm being taken care of way better than I ever was when other people think that I was in my prime. And my time is worth so much more now that it's worth it to do it. If that was worth it to do it on the business end, then I'd be into it. But knowing how much I make right now as like the main eventer, as the whole effing show, how far above a normal budget I am right now, which keeps me home most of the time, which is what I prefer. I can't imagine that somebody would want to give that paycheck to someone that's just backstage, but I don't know.
So,
I mean, also let me add, I've never missed a business when I'm not around it, so I know I'm different than the other guys. Every Hall of Fame speech, they talk about how addicted they are and how much they miss the crowd and how cool it is being on that mic right now at this moment. And I've never felt that way. When I had 12 months off from my knee injury, it was probably my favorite year of my career, and I asked for more time off. When I had the 30-day suspension for getting busted with possession of marijuana and I had to drop the ECW and WWE titles, I asked for more time at the end of that. I figured a long time ago, a lot of the guys can't wait to get away from home and be out on the road, and some other guys can't wait to get off the road and be home, and I definitely know which of those guys I am.
Well, since you took that route, let me hit you with this, and I'm sure you've been asked this God knows how many times now as well, but pick a guy, name a guy for me, any company you want that you're looking at right now, if there is one, and say, man, I'd like to, at least one match, I'd like to hook up with that guy and see what we could do. Is there anybody that stands out to you?
My brain really doesn't think that way. I consider those like fantasy matches, which I don't really have. I've said my whole career when I was asked, I've always said, give me main event at WrestleMania because I know that one pays the most. And I mean, I don't look at somebody and think like, wow, I should go wrestle him because we'd have a great match. Like I'm so far beyond that. You know what I mean? Like it's like. It's about the business, and I enjoy the business. When I'm in the ring, I love showing off, and I explain all of this in my movie Headstrong as well. I got no problem admitting all the other guys are hungrier than me, and that means they have a drive. They want to be there. They're excited to be in the dressing room, and they want what I've already had. They want to be where I've been, and of course they do. And I'm still where I am. I got where I got, and I am where I am now. And hey, I reached legendary status. Can't tell somebody how to be a legend. Not everybody can be one. But I wish the best for everybody. I don't think as a coach that I can really turn young kids into legends. I think it takes time. It takes consistency. I always try to have the best matches with anybody, regardless of whether it was Spike Dudley Little Guido or Bam Bam Bigelow One Man Gang. For me, I always wanted to have the best match on the, and I figured that was how I was gonna back up being the whole effing show. It worked out pretty well.
So before I let you go, I want to hit you with two real quick things, and then we'll let you go here. But what do you want your legacy to be? Is it a man that's like you said, you're all business, and that's how you look at it? Is that what you want your legacy to be, or we also talked about how the guys look at you and how they've revered you and respect you for all these years, and maybe how the fans have as well toward you. Is your legacy going to be a combination of all of that, or what do you feel it's going to be?
Well, I don't know. Do we get to pick our legacy, or is our legacy just what people talk about us after we're gone?
That's a good question.
I think, some of the qualities about myself that I enjoy hearing the most are when people say that that I'm so honest, that I'm so down to earth, that I'm such a good person, so positive. Fans, usually that's their comment after they meet me when I do autograph signings. I'll be like, man, he was the coolest dude ever. That goes a really long way with me. I would like for people to remember me as being genuine, as being honest, and as being different. I've done everything my own way. I've always done that. I think I always will, and I'm pretty happy with the way things turned out. I think we all have our own values, and that's what people need to understand. Whatever your values are, you need to do certain things to make yourself have the best life that you possibly can. It might not be the same thing that I do or that this guy does, and that's why there's so much conflict. It starts when you're a kid. People are stupid. Why are you wearing those shoes? Or why are you hanging out with that guy? Eventually you got to learn everybody has their own path and their own values, and there's no need to enforce your values on somebody else, especially if you don't have kids, which I don't. I don't tell anybody to do anything. I don't even. I ask people to do something. I don't even think I could say, "Hey, open the door for me." I'm like, "Hey, would you mind getting in the door?" It's just I'm passive. I'm non-confrontational. I'm always working on being a better person. I hope that stands out. I hope people remember me for being, one of the best wrestlers, one of their favorite wrestlers, and I hope on a character level, I hope they remember me for being genuine and honest. Because if people choose to pattern themselves after me, that's how I would have them do that, to have a better life, to be honest and to be genuine.
I think that's spoken as from the heart as anything I've ever heard. I think that's fantastic. Tell folks out there how they can find Headstrong. Where can they find this at? How can they watch it?
Yeah, please check out my movie Headstrong, and then hit me up at The Real RVD on social media and let me know your thoughts. It's people started saying that the movie was important, and I didn't understand that at first. Now I agree. I think it is important. I'm sharing my very personal deep experiences in this movie. Like, you're going to know me more than you ever thought or ever wanted to know me, because I am that genuine, and I bring you in that much. And I love the way that it turned out, and so does everybody that's seen it so far. Headstrong is available on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, Fight TV, and Vudu.
Sweet. Awesome. Rob Van Dam, man, thank you for your time. This has been fantastic. I appreciate you taking time to talk to me today, man.
I enjoyed it. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for helping me get the word out with Headstrong and with Concussions.
All right, man. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Cool. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
And there you have it, folks. The Rob Van Dam interview. How did you like that? Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully it was fun. Yes, I had a blast doing it. And again, you see what I mean now by the audio portion of it. I know it kind of sucks, but it's something I'm working on my end. I'd rather have a much better system in place. It's kind of a long story. I'm not going to bore you with the mechanics behind it or the details, but needless to say, I want to come up with something a little bit better. But this is, I don't think it sounds bad. If it sounded bad, you wouldn't be listening to it right now, folks. I would have done something else. But sometimes you just got to roll with the punches, man, and do the best you can with it. So that's what I'm doing here as I beat and bang on my laptop. It's so crazy, man. Try to get the background noise in check, but it's hard sometimes. I'm not gonna lie to you. You would know these things if you watch this live, as we said, every Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wrestling Rumors Facebook page. Where have you been? Under a rock? Hello, wake up, get with it, man. Cool kids are hanging out there. You should hang out too. So there you go. That's enough of me scolding my audience for today. So yeah, man. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got a blast. Had a blast listening to it. I want to remind you real quick of where you can find the show. If you just happen to click on this on YouTube, or if you found it on the Facebook and thought you'd just give it a listen, remember that you can subscribe and download the show on iTunes or Google Play. We are always on YouTube and, of course, on the Facebook, so you can't miss us. The website is boinkstudios.com, B-O-I-N-K, boinkstudios.com. I'm in the process of revamping the site. I want to make it much better and much more user-friendly than what it currently is, so stay tuned for that. You can also find my stuff. I'm on Wrestling Rumors, of course, but I'm also on ProWrestling.com. thechairshot.com, and on the floor seat as well. And as we said before we cut to the interview, man, we got to do some thank yous here. I have to thank you, a couple good thank yous here. One to Joe Clark, who is the man that directed the documentary Headstrong. As we said before, if you've not seen it, go out of your way to watch it. It is indeed, it's entertaining, but it's very thought-provoking as well, and it's intense. And Rob's a very passionate guy. He's an intense guy. And before, when I said that he's down to earth and humble and human and real, he's all of those things, but at the same time, he is incredibly passionate. He's an intense guy in his own way. And, he can be, I don't know if he would say he's complicated, but I think that he is such a mixture of so many different things that you could use the word not mean it in an offensive way. Do you know what I mean? Very nice guy, as I said before. Great talking to him, and hopefully you got something cool out of this interview. So, of course, my second thank you is to the man himself, Rob Van Dam. Thank you very much for giving us the time here on the show. Every time we do an interview, I always tell you to stay tuned, that there's more on the way, and there definitely is more on the way. I've got a couple more things in the works, and hopefully they pan out. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I've said this before, and if nothing's happened, as is sometimes the case, don't take that to heart, because sometimes they just don't work out, and I'll just keep pushing to the next thing. So that's all we got for you this time, man. We hope you enjoyed it, and like we said before, if you have not subscribed and downloaded the show, please do so today, and do me a favor, leave us a review. All the content that comes from yours truly is free of charge. All you need is an internet connection, baby. And we'll hook you up with everything I got for you all day long, 24/7, Jack. Click of a button, man. Instant entertainment. You can't beat that, right? It's 2019. Get with it, dude. Come on. That's it from me, man. I'm out of here. Thanks for listening to Tom Clark's Main Event. We will see you next time. Hang out with us on Facebook, man. It's a blast. We're out of here. We'll see you next time on Tom Clark's Main Event.